Leonard Floyd is not feeling good today. He's sick. It's non-COVID related, so that's a positive. So sent him home. Want to make sure that he just is feeling better, but don't expect that to affect his game status. He's making all the right progress. It has nothing to do with the concussion or anything of that nature. So as long as he's feeling healthy and back to normal, everything should be good to go. We're going to be smart with Double D on his thigh, and then Whitworth will have a veteran rest day. Everybody else is good.
Process, does this push back the steps that he would be able to try to progress through?
It shouldn't. No, because it's all really just physically going through the, he's kind of checked all the boxes, Jordan. It's really just some of the semantics of going through practice and coming out where you're saying, okay, I'm physically performing, I'm still remaining asymptomatic and all those things. So, but it's a separate deal is what I just wanted to make sure I was clear with you guys about.
You expect him to be back in order to receive that clearance later this week?
Yes. No. No, he looked, it might have been painful for him, but he looked pretty mobile, pretty special against the Vikings last week. So I don't put much merit into that. He's a great player, and he sure looks every bit as good as he always has.
Sean, with that said, you know how hard it is to win in Green Bay, especially with Aaron Rodgers leading the offense. Do you approach this game like any other game on the road?
Well, you try to be consistent with your process and your preparation, Claudia, but you do know what a great challenge it is. They've got a great quarterback, and he does an outstanding job, but they've got great players around him. They're really great in all three phases of their team. They're well coached, and so that's why they've been at the upper echelon and kind of really the standard for the NFC the last couple years. So we got to play a really good, clean football game, got to play the best of our ability, and that's exactly what we're going to do. He's doing really well, Lindsay. The one thing is he's very smart. Game comes naturally to him. I think we're just working through, like you said, it's the early parts of the week. We'll be able to get some good full-speed reps today and this afternoon and figure out exactly how we kind of tighten up the plan and what it looks like to maximize his skill sets. But he's going to be ready to go, and we expect to see a lot of him.
I know every season is different and whatnot, but Stafford has played the Packers as much, I think, close to as much as any other.
Sure.
And how his familiarity playing at Lambeau and whatnot, how does that work to his advantage?
Well, I think that's probably a better question for him, but I think you kind of just answered it. He's familiar with the venue. He knows their personnel. They have had some continuity, even though their defensive structure and system is different with Joe running the defense. Players they still have great players, and he knows these guys. And so I think there's a comfort in just, these are familiar settings, but I think he also realizes what a special venue it is, how difficult it is to go there and to compete to try to be able to get a win. But I know he's excited about that. I know he loves playing there, but those things, as far as the specifics, I think he'd probably be better equipped to answer that one.
And then when you looked at last season's playoff game, and specifically Aaron Donald and how he might have been impacted by his rib situation, what did you see in that game in terms of how he was impacted or wasn't impacted?
Yeah, I see. When you think about what he was really persevering and pushing through, it just epitomizes what a stud he is and how much he wanted to be out there with his teammates. Again, I think that's probably a question better for Aaron, but the suddenness, the twitch, the explosion, all the things that make him special, there were some limitations in that, and then obviously the snap count was limited. But you give them their credit. They did a great job. They were, they're one of the best offenses in the league. They're coming off a great performance last week. They played really well all throughout the course of last year, and so it's going to be a great challenge. We need to see Aaron playing like we know Aaron is capable of to be at our best. But I love Aaron Donald, and I think we all saw how important it was to him. Just with the way that he went about giving himself an opportunity to go compete in that game, and that's one of the things that makes him special. Yeah, I think so. You talk about doing the little things the right way. We always talk about being fundamentally sound, and for those skill players, when you're throwing and catching the football, it's looking it in. You always hear Coach Arbor talk about catching the ball with your eyes, making sure that your hand placement is in the appropriate spots, and in a lot of instances, a lot of those drops were reflections of guys trying to run before they secured the catch. And these are all plays that those guys that did drop the football have consistently made, and I believe they will consistently make moving forward. But sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise if it's handled the right way, which I know our guys will do, where, hey, extra emphasis on not taking anything for granted, great ball security, framing that ball, looking it all the way in through the catch, all right, and then being able to do what you do after the catch.
Just to follow up on what Gary was asked about, Aaron, what do you recall about just the emotion he showed after the game last year against the Packers, and what do you think that emotion was indicative of?
How important it is to him. I think there was probably a combination of things, but you talk about a great player that if Aaron Donald didn't play another snap right now, he's a Hall of Fame player. I don't think anybody would debate that. He is all about the right stuff, Lindsey. He wants to win. He wants to do everything for this team to try to help his teammates to be able to achieve success collectively. And I think there was a lot of emotions because of how important it is, where that represents the finality of, the chase to try to go, be a world champion. But then it also represented him working through some stuff. And I think it was a combination of probably the frustration not being able to be at his best because of the injury that he sustained against Seattle the prior week. And so anytime that it's important to you, you can really see that. And I think you guys know from covering him, this guy checks all the boxes about what's right about a great player with the way he handles himself, what kind of teammate, what kind of leader he is, how consistently he approaches the things that nobody else sees but we see with his weekly, his daily, his hourly rhythm. And so, guys like Aaron Donald are why you want to work so hard as a coach to try to help do what you can within the framework of your control to help them achieve those goals that he wants to have. And that's what I think that was reflective of.
Sean, the league is sort of watching what I think you guys internally were readying yourselves for last year, an increase of two high shells in particular. That's an overgeneralization.
Sure.
Obviously, a lot comes out of those shells, but how has that process been? You guys are seventh most, seeing those shells seventh most league right now, as opposed to last year on sixth of dropbacks. So how did that troubleshooting process of finding those contours, and then also as you're onboarding a new quarterback, understanding this is coming for you guys and a lot of quarterbacks across the league, what was that troubleshooting process like?
Yeah, what I would say is I think a lot of it is a reflection of, all right, what's the foundational philosophy that the defense wants to operate with? And we've played a couple of those defensive structures that, anytime you have success, right, it's a copycat league. These are principles that have been in alignment. It just ends up being a little bit more emphasized, now more so because you look at it with Coach Fangio, all the success that he's had with that philosophy. Then Brandon comes from that school. We had a lot of success defensively. You see that bridge out to the Chargers. Now Joe goes and he becomes the defensive coordinator. You're seeing similar things from the Bears. So I think you see an uptick of the philosophy and that kind of approach. No different than offensive ones that are designed to manipulate some of these coverage contours, but dependent upon the different types of split safety. Are you talking to the safeties half field players? What are they doing inside? Are they playing quarters types of structures? What's the leverage underneath? There's so many intricacies to it, and a lot of the situational times that it comes up is reflective of what we're really trying to do. But I think what it really boils down to is efficiency each and every single play, making sure that as a quarterback we're exhausting progressions, making sure that we're able to distribute the field that gives us answers based on the Rolodex of coverages that a Green Bay or that we can present or whoever that we're playing. And you are seeing an uptick in some of those split safety looks. But I think, you see some other really good defenses that don't necessarily do that. I mean, you look at, New Orleans, I'm thinking of right now, has been really successful defensively. They'll play some shell, but, they're not afraid of screwing a safety down in there and being a little bit more matchy. So I think it's more of a product of some of just the overarching philosophies of the defensive coordinator and how they want to operate defensively.
You kind of touched on my next question. Are you also seeing an increase of rotations out of the shell? And I'm wondering, does that correlate at all with what you guys are doing with your under center play action right now?
Yeah, I would say, in a lot of instances, I mean, if the picture changes and the quarterback puts his back to the defense, it's definitely a different thing. And I think a lot of the best defenses, they make the quarterback decide post-snap. That's one of those things where, hey, one of the things I think every defensive coordinator would say is, hey, what's one of the goals? Let's affect and influence the quarterback. Well, one of the ways that you can do that is by making him make all of his. Sometimes teams do that, sometimes they don't. But, you're seeing a lot of these good defenses, and that does make it a little bit more difficult where, hey, I'm taking a snap, pre-snap. It looks like it's one coverage. Then when I come and flip back around, it's a totally different structure. That being said, a lot of those play actions are kind of pure progression types of plays anyways. So you're feeling and seeing voids as opposed to where when you're running some of the drop back stuff, you do have a lot of coverage reads and how quickly can you get through getting 5 eligibles out and different things like that. So you always ask those good deep dive questions, but I don't know if that really answers it, but I think it's more of a product of, all right, what's the landscape of the league? And, you see things go in cycles, no different than, a few years ago, you see the zone read come into prevalence where, the Dolphins, when Tony Sparano was the head coach and Ronnie Brown's running the Wildcat, then you saw that. Teams' defenses started to adjust. So things like this kind of go in cycles, and that's what makes it fun, and that's where you always have to stay up to speed with what's going on.
And I'm sorry, guys, if I could just bring it to the micro on that point, too. So you still are comfortable with the ability of Matthew to move the pocket around on some of those action things?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Linebacker Devondre Campbell seems to be thriving and coming over. Is that accurate? What do you see?
Yeah, he's done a great job. I've always, from playing him our first year when he was in Atlanta to then him being in Arizona last year, I think he's one of the more underrated players in this league. He's got great length. He's a great blitzer. He's got sideline to sideline range. He can cover, and I think Joe's done an outstanding job about, being able to activate him in a variety of ways that accentuates his skill sets. I think he's one of the more underrated signings this year, with you look at the impact and the influence defense. Joe and Kirk Olivedati have done a great job with him. He's a great player, and there's no doubt about it, Kurt. He's showing up. He shows up all over that film.
John, when you think back to kind of your even younger days with Matt LaFleur
Yeah.
talking about football and whatnot, here you guys are now facing each other with both of you have established NFL quarterbacks.
Sure.
Is this kind of the ultimate matchup for you in terms of teaming against your friend?
Yeah, it is, but I think in a lot of instances you have to be able to trust the tape. We're very familiar with one another, no different than, Joe's familiar with us and we are with him. But, it's still about execution, making sure that we try to put our guys in good positions. But I look at it as a blessing, Gary. I'm gonna go try to do the best that we can to compete to the best of our ability against a great football team. One of my best friends happens to be the head coach, Joe Barry, who's the defensive coordinator, is a really close friend, and so those guys mean a lot. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to try to go give it our best shot. And we know what a great challenge it is. But I think when you talk about the perspective that it gives you, even when you go back to when we were playing them in the playoffs, pretty special, and you definitely don't take for granted how lucky we are to be able to coach in this league, work with the players that make this, what it is and make it what's special. They're good. Yeah, we're a resilient group. I know that I think the bye came at a good time for us. You obviously didn't want to go into a bye off of a performance, but that we didn't play like we're capable of. But you do give the Niners credit. But our guys know, and I think, you asked the question a couple days ago, Kevin, this league, every single week, there's one of those things that, a lot of times where different things are occurring. And so you got to be resilient. You got to be mentally tough, and we got to be where our feet are planted. And hey, let's just see if we can get better today, do everything in our power to compete to the best of our ability, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's the mindset that we have. And I think you have to have mentally tough people. You can't let what happened previously affect your ability to move forward. Otherwise, this league will eat you up. And that's the type of guys that we have, and that's why you love coming to work with them. And we're excited about the next opportunity that we do have. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Early visit, afternoon, guys. How you guys doing?
Great, how are you?
Awesome.
Raheem, can you take us kind of, sorry to go back a couple weeks after the bye, but what happened on the defense against the 49ers to allow several drives?
Yeah,
Rested?
to make it really simple and short, they played more physical game than us from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint. They were able to maintain those drives by playing old school torture ball type mentality. 3 yards in a cloud of dust. If you get enough runs and enough opportunities, and you play more physical and able to attack our edges and to be able to get some more productive runs and to keep drives going, to make sure you keep manageable third downs, in order us to not to get to those situations, we can release some of our specific pressures. They did a great job, great game plan. They were the more physical team that night. They did an excellent job in order to get us off track. And we didn't play complimentary ball as a team, but just from a selfish standpoint from us, we can be more physical. We can set terms differently and do some different things that way.
How do you correct that?
You got to come out and play a little bit more physical. Some of the stuff would be complimentary ball. Some of the stuff is winning on the third down opportunities that you do have. We lost in some third downs that were critical there. A couple tight window throws. Some of those throws I can think about right now, going between Taylor and Fuller on one. That last one at the end on the big time 4th and 5. We were able to make a few plays there and a couple big long third downs, but for the most part, they kept it in third and manageables. When you're thinking about I'm thinking about 2 weeks now, Liz, but those plays were huge that they made when they made them on third down, because those are opportunities to get off the grass when a team is having some success running the ball, getting 3 yards. If you get 3 yards twice, it's a 3 yards twice is a third down and medium, which is a tough window to win, and you got to try to win those windows.
Obviously, them keeping on the ground as much as they did.
Sure.
And when you guys do come up on this slate, at least two
Oh, yeah.
ball control teams here and limit the opportunities for actual takeaways.
You got to know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, go, Jordan. Finish.
Well, I was just saying, how do you produce what you call make a difference plays? How do you establish and reestablish that consistent identity?
There's no doubt about that, Jordan. So what it all goes down to, like the end of the day, you talk about takeaways, right? The only stat that I care about, right? It's the biggest one. When we win that battle, we're 7-0. When we lose that battle, we're not so good. Those are 3 losses. And when you limit our opportunities to do those things, you limit our opportunities to make those plays that make a difference in the game. That's why I think those things are so important to us. But what you have to do is you got to go out there and play complementary ball. We got to score points on offense. We got to find a way to get turnovers on defense. We got to make plays on special teams. And if we can make those things, you put people in uncomfortable spaces in order to put themselves at harm's way. And we got to do a better job than that. The 49ers, 2 weeks ago at this point, before the bye, they did a wonderful job of moving the ball. They did a wonderful job of running the football. They did a great job of maintaining third down. And that's a recipe for disaster for us and for really just about anybody in the National Football League. That was a old school game. We used to refer to it as torture ball back in the day, when you got to line up and put neck rolls on and tackle some people and then try to win third down and get off. We used to play a lot of those games back in Tampa. We had a lot of those skill-type players like we have here. And those games are tough ones. You got to win those ones.
Not every team is going to have joker players of that caliber.
Sure.
But the way that they were scheming, at times Jalen out of the play, out of the target, times forcing the ball toward your linebackers,
No
other
doubt.
players. What was your analysis of that and what's on tape in that regard and how to counter it?
When you got those kind of guys, you could put them at tailback. They switch positions, and he's able to dot the I and do some of those type of things. That takes away Jalen off of that player. And you got to stand up other places. Some of our other joker guys got to stand up. You need to earn to step up and be a defender. Need to stop him from running the football. Do some of those type of things. They able to do some things with Kittles. But you can move them around. You can do some other things going with Jalen, and you can call some match-type defenses and go line up on them straight up and play them. But you got to get to those situations also to be able to do those things. So we just got to do a better job being more physical on the early downs, the run downs we call them. Get them in some get back on track downs, which they don't think they had all night. And then you got to get those guys in longer third downs so you can have more success on third down and able to get off the field. And not only able to give our opportunity for our offense to get going and get more rhythm and do some of those things and some of that nature. So, and then hopefully, if you're really rolling, you get a big-time play from your special teams somewhere else, and we lift each other up somehow, whether it be the defense, the offense, or the special teams, however you want to do it from a team standpoint.
What is the impact been of missing Sebastian?
It's always tough to lose those guys, but that's the nature of the beast in our game. You don't want to sit here and talk about what Sebastian could do just because whatever you say is an excuse and you refuse to make those things. Greg Gaines has done a wonderful job being in there doing some great things for us. I don't want to take away from the credit from what the 49ers did to us by limiting it just to Sebastian and what he would bring to us and some of the things he would do. Those guys did a great job. It was a marvelous game plan. It was well executed. They did a wonderful job there. We got to do a better job as a coaching staff, as players, as everybody, across the board as a team in order to win those type of games and make those games more physical, make those games better, get those games to the track, the pace that we want in order to dictate those terms. But you certainly miss Sebastian. I mean, that goes without being said. But you don't want to talk about who you're missing, not in this league, because next man up mentality.
Raheem, when it comes to takeaways, will you focus on trying to create more fumbles? And is that a delicate balance? Because then maybe you're not wrapping up.
No, you know what it is? It's always you talk about it. When you talk about takeaways, you talk about the opportunity to get it off the uncharacteristic way. Interceptions are kind of like, easier to talk about. They're easier to see. When you should have them. You can see the missed-ops. They're clear. They're not always as clear when you're talking about trying to take it off a running back or trying to take it off a guy with the ball in his hand. But you don't let it get in the way of your tackling because you're always talking about the second man in or you're always talking about the chase tackle situations. You're talking about when you're playing the guys like San Fran are fighting for extra yards, that ball becomes vulnerable when you talk about the ball plan and how you want to go after it. And definitely when it really comes to life, when you talk about taking the ball to somebody, it's always the quarterback. And that's when you get them in those third down and long situations when you can absolutely get at them as far as a sack fumble. And that's the easiest guy to get the ball off of when you're talking about the field. So you never let it get in the way of tackling. You never let it get in the way of those things. And you never let that become an issue because it's always a mentality and a thought process and how you attack the football.
Particularly in the,
You guys have a new challenge now. Trying to pressure Aaron Rodgers so he can make mistakes has been very difficult
Sure.
for many teams. What are your thoughts about the pass rush against Cleveland?
You got to earn the right to rush the passer. So they got a guy in the backfield, number 28, and you don't know if Aaron's coming back or not, but you got to be prepared to deal with him. And you got to stop the run to get to the point to be able to rush the passer. You're talking about, one of the, or if not the best, guys that comes to reading defenses and knowing where the ball should go. So it's not always about sacking him. Most of the time it's about getting him off the spot, getting him out of rhythm, not allowing the ball to go where it's supposed to go. Hopefully you can confuse him a few times, and if so, that gives you more opportunity to get to him. If you can play a little bit man coverage and match some people, you get him to hold it a little bit or throw it into bad areas and get the ball back off of him. So he presents one of the greatest challenges in our game, and there's guys in this league that can do that to you. We're fortunate enough to get a win versus Tom Brady, very similar characteristics. We got a guy like that in our building, and these guys present great challenges playing against these guys every single year in the National Football League.
Raheem, two very different offenses, obviously.
Sure.
Between San Francisco and then what Matt is doing in Green Bay, but obviously one's very compounded toward the line of scrimmage, the other can air it out when necessary. But in last year's loss to
Oh,
Green
yeah.
Bay, and then also this most recent one, you guys, one sort of line of thread seemed to be that both teams were able to pick their spots when they did pass the ball, were successful in those matchups in terms of picking, and then getting the ball.
Oh, yeah.
So how, as a coordinator and as a group collectively, how do you guys extrapolate those tendencies and try to scheme around those situations, understanding you're also trying to look at the big picture?
For one, you gotta force those guys to get negative plays, so you can take some more shots and do some different things. We took a couple shots there. One time was unfortunate. We got a penalty with a face mask. We had a couple tackles for losses that were negated by that. We had a couple tackles for losses that they were able to pick up on a second down and long, get it back into a third down and manageable. So you got to stop those things. When you have your opportunities, you got to make them. You can't let the missed opportunities, whether it be an interception or whether it be getting to a third down and long, get in the way. You got to find ways to make those things happen. So how do you make those things happen? You got to find a ways to create negative plays on first downs, what I call rundowns, and you got to find a way to take advantage of those pass downs or get back on track, if you're talking about from an offensive standpoint, and get those guys to those third and longs. And when you only have, I believe it was 2, I can't remember right off the top of my head right now, third and longs, I believe we won 1, lost 1. Those situations you got to take advantage of to be able to get off the grass. You've been stopped twice, and I'm going to stop you this third time, but I was coming back to you.
Well, okay. What's it like, first of all, as a defensive coordinator, to have to endure an 18-play scoring drive?
You're not actually counting over there, So when it's going on, they're driving the ball, and you make a play, and you look up, and you go, man, that was 4 yards, okay. And you make another play, and you look up, okay, that was another 3 yards, okay. Third down is short, and you try to get a stop, and it's like bang, bang, play. All right, next snap, and then actually get all the way down to the red zone. You get there, you make it to a big-time third down in the red zone, and you take away the first look, and Garoppolo makes a good play, looks back across the field, hits a back shoulder to Kittles, and he's like, let's get to the sideline, readjust, let's reset, and get ready to play again. Then you go out, and you get an unfortunate play on our offense, and next thing you know, it's 14-0. You go out there, and you're able to get a stop. They get another long drive. You come back after halftime. You're a little behind the 8 ball. You're able to make some pretty good plays and keep us in the game, and hopefully we can get a score and get back in that thing. And it's just like it just didn't happen that night. Sean says it's the best team in that 4-hour frame window, that 4-hour frame or that 3-hour time frame is going to win a game. And they were the best team that night. And it's always you want to make the plays. You want to make. We talk about it since we've known each other, make a difference plays, and we were not able to make any make a difference plays.
And finally, how did Von Miller play in that game, and what do you expect to see out of him moving forward?
It was really interesting talking to Vaughn because he had a different perspective probably than everybody else. He said, I don't like losing, but I had a lot of fun. And I said, good. I said, that's a nice step forward for you, So getting him in a full week of practice, getting him the opportunity to come in and be more involved with his teammates and be more involved and get involved with what we want to get going, and hopefully being able to show him how we want to play and dictate some terms this week is what I most look forward to. And I'm excited to be with him. He brings a lot of energy to us, a lot of juice. The guy, he's going to do nothing but help us, and I hope it's this week. All right, guys.
What's up, guys?
What would you like to see from Matthew Stafford carry over now, going to not the second half, but coming out of the bye? The good stuff, and what would you like to see him improve on?
Yeah, I think getting a chance to kind of look at the entire totality of the 10 games coming out of the bye. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, and then there's some things just overall, how we've started certain games and him understanding just to continue to play each play as its own. And he does such a good job of being consistent, but also, making some big-time throws and plays. And like he's done throughout his whole career, just picking his spots to really, understand when to, maybe push the limits on a decision and trust his ability to make some tight window throws versus, checking the ball down, throwing completions, getting drives off to good starts, all those things to, kind of allow the consistency of our offense to kind of, grab hold and then all the traits and all the things we want to do offensively from an attacking mindset. We got to get off to better starts on early downs and be efficient. And I think we can kind of, as a group, coaches included, we can all kind of get into a rhythm early and figure out how we want to attack opponents.
And with him, what changes now that Robert Woods is not available as one of his targets?
Yeah, I think, we're going to be feeling, Woody's loss. He means so much to us as a leader, but also just all the different roles that was able to do for us. It's a collective group to kind of fill some of those responsibilities while also understanding how we need to maybe adjust and adapt to, what our offense may look like now compared to when you had a player like Robert Woods. But I think we feel really good about the guys as a group, collectively, top to bottom there. And it's just about continuing to really hone in on what they do well now. And maybe it is different, maybe it is adjustments, maybe it is figuring out what's the best for us moving forward.
When you have a player of Odell's caliber coming in mid-season and his sort of track record and what he can do,
Yep.
does that become less of a, all right, learn our entire offense, go, and more of a week-to-week situational game plan? Is that the more efficient way to do it, do you think?
Yeah, I think, week to week in the NFL is so, what we like to do as coaches is pull from our, menu of things that we've been doing since, mid-July as an offense. But he obviously wasn't here for the progression of what we've kind of become. So it really is, it would be foolish, I think, to try to say, hey, learn it all. Or like what we're trying to do, really hone in on what we're going to ask him to do, and then let's get as many reps, mental and on the field leading up to these games as possible to make him feel comfortable, but then Matthew feel comfortable with him, and then he can provide some feedback on maybe we can, carve it down a little more for him to help be that much more detailed in what he's doing.
Understanding that, you guys all work together in various facets of the offense.
Yep.
And designing and developing and those types of things. Whose sort of responsibility does that particular portion of what you guys are designing become? Is it worked in overall to the game plan week to week, or is it somebody, 2 people, 5 people, getting this guy up to speed?
As far as just his role or how he fits into our... Yeah, I think it's a big picture, between obviously Sean and myself and the other coaches of figuring out schematically how we want to use him based upon the things he does well, which are a lot of different things. And then once we kind of have that focus and we can narrow in on him, it's, Eric Yarber, our receivers coach, Chris O'Hara does a great job assisting him. And then obviously myself and Sean and really Matthew as well, making sure all angles of it from a standpoint of being supportive of him and giving him clarity on exactly what we want to transpire, and then having it set in a way where it's things he does well and he's comfortable doing. And then if there's things that maybe are new for him, we spend a little more time on that or give him an extra rep, whatever it may be.
With such a high emphasis on not turning the ball over
Yeah.
and winning that because you're 7-0 when you don't, does that change how you scheme, or is it, just guys protect the ball better?
Yeah, I think it's really something where scheming things, you really you're constantly looking at it from a risk-reward perspective of trying to get out in front of maybe potential problems. That's really our job as coaches. You like some of the things you can attack coverages with and, kind of write it up on a chalkboard, we always say. But then there's the real element of having to block the guys up front. There's the element of being able to see things real time from an NFL pocket, understanding how the spacing is going to work out, maybe when there's a defense trying to inhibit our guys free runs through zones, whatever it may be. Maybe it's beating man coverage. How are they playing man coverage to where these throws will be a little bit tighter? We may have to hold the ball in the pocket a little bit longer, and you're balancing that to kind of understand, okay, this is worth it, and the emphasis needs to be there. How can we try to maybe help the edges, help the protection, speed up this concept, whatever it is? You're constantly, checks and balances to be able to say, this is exactly how we want to do it, and then we understand the risk there. And then that's why we have so much faith in Matthew of understanding situationally in a game, down in distance, how the game's going, the rhythm of the game, where he can pick his spots like we talked about earlier to really either be ultra aggressive or understand, time clock, feeling the pocket maybe and getting to his, outlets or quick element throws. And we try to build it in a way where there's a constant give and take. You also don't want to talk out of both sides of your mouth, and you want your guys to be aggressive and understand that we want to dictate as much as possible as an offense. So it's a lot that goes into it. And the one thing is, never overreact over, one play here or there based upon an outcome. If your process is right, and we're coaching technique and fundamentals and ball security the right way, and we got the right guys, which I think we do, over the course of the season, we expect things to, go our way.
Matthew Stafford has played, I think, 10 times at Lambeau Field. It's assumed that that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what specifically does a quarterback need to know about the place he's playing? Is it physical things? Is it the atmosphere?
That's a good question, and I think it's at a place like that. He knows the environment, he knows the crowd noise, he knows where the play clocks are, he knows what the surface is like for footing. He knows a lot more than maybe some of us who have only been there once or twice and different times a year. Obviously, we did go there for a playoff game last year, so we got the feel of that colder environment, what that can do to the playing surface, what that does to the feel of the ball, pitching and catching, all those things. But we'll rely on his experience level of, all the different times he's been there and had success there, and maybe some other times he's learned from some of those experiences how he wants to go about it moving forward. But I think it's a bonus. I think it's a plus. But make no mistake about it, really tough team to go play on the road in their home environment. Really good football team in all three phases. So not just Matthew, but we really want to rely on a lot of our guys' experience as well.
Kevin, just to go back to Odell for just a second, what's that process been like in terms of integrating him into the offense, just figuring out his role, figuring out his role and getting up to speed, and just like the collaboration and the dialogue between everyone involved in that?
Yeah, well, obviously leading up to our last game, it was more so, we found out pretty late in the week. When we got him, we were excited, but then obviously in a pretty tight timeline, obviously we lose Woody. And then, we got to make adjustments to make sure we can maximize what he was able to go do in that game. And I thought he did a really, really great job from a standpoint of it is not as simple as just putting on a Rams uniform and running out there and playing. There's a lot of work that he put in leading up to that game, and it's continued both on his own and now that we have a real clear plan for him with our staff and kind of building. The good thing is, obviously we had the extra day Monday, and then leading into truly now our normal game week schedule, he can kind of in phases of the game plan really learn what his job is and the details on that in the run and pass game, and he can build on it by the day. And I think that's huge with how we game plan, how we put the process of a plan together. It's a process for us as coaches, and then how we deliver that message with as much detail as we can to let our guys then go practice it, correct anything we need to correct, and then feel good about taking it to Lambeau this Sunday. So it's a good question, but it's a lot that goes into it. Is a daily process that leads into the weekly process.
Kevin, the Vikings were able to get some good yardage against the Packers. Were you guys able to see anything there in the film that you can use?
Yeah, the Vikings did a great job. Obviously generating some plays there. The one thing I will say is they had a couple turnovers that one was overturned and another one was, flipped by a roughing the passer penalty in the red zone. They had another chance at another ball down the field a couple times. So very opportunistic defense. They play really, really hard. They're a problem up front with, not only their personnel, Kenny Clark and those edge players and the rest of those guys up front do a really good job. Obviously the linebackers have been a bright spot for them, being able to do different things, how they play their coverages. And then on the back end, two really good safeties. And then they have corners that they feel strongly playing in one-on-one situations. So you're going to attack some things. You're going to look at how they play coverages, but no, they're going to be really well coached and they're going to be opportunistic. So we got to be great with our decision making, great with our pitch and catch, location, guys finishing plays, tough catches. We expect them to be contested catches, but it's what our guys do well, and we'll get right back to it. And it's just a matter of meeting that challenge on the road, whatever the environment is, but playing our best football when it's required.
All set.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,